Morning, dear students. A warm welcome to all of you for our today's digital revision session for the subject Science and Technology Section A. In our yesterday's session, we had completed the revision for chapter number 3 and half of chapter number 4 we had completed. We have completed up to the concept valency and we have seen how sodium chloride is formed. So today first we will complete with the revision for chapter number 4 and then we will start with chapter number 2. So let's begin. Now yesterday, after understanding the concept of valency, I had told you that I want your textbooks in the hand today, especially page number 54. Complete the following chart. Now this chart is based on the concept of valency. The element's name is given. They have given the atomic number. This chart is thoroughly done by me when the chapter was taught to you. So I will read once again. I will explain you how the valence electrons derive the valency of a particular element. Those who have missed out with the video can copy it down in your textbook. So in your textbook on page number 54, element hydrogen having atomic number 1, electronic configuration is 1, valence electrons are 1 valence electron either is given up or taken, so valency is 1. Helium atomic number 2, electronic configuration is 2, valence electrons are 2, valency is 0 because you know first shell is satisfied with 2 electrons. Lithium 3, 2 electrons in the first shell, so 1, valence electrons is 1, that 1 electron will be given away, so valency is 1. Beryllium atomic number is 4, 2, valence electrons are 2, that 2 electrons will be given up, so valency is 2. Boron atomic number is 5, 2, 3 valence electrons, 3 will be given up, valency is 3. Carbon 6, 2, 4 valence electrons, 4 electrons will be given up, valency is 4. Nitrogen atomic number 7, 2, 5 valence electrons are 5. Now instead of giving away 5 electrons, what will nitrogen do? It will take up 3 electrons, so in the second shell it will become satisfied with 8 electrons. So 3 electrons will be taken up, so valency is 3. Similar concepts is applied for oxygen and fluorine. 6 valence electrons, 7 valence electrons, so 2 will be taken up, 1 will be taken up, so valence is 2 and 1 for oxygen and fluorine respectively. For neon is already satisfied with 2 and 8, so valency is 0. Sodium 11, 2, 8, 1. In the third shell 1 electron is there, so that becomes your valence electrons, valency is 1. Similarly for magnesium it is 2, aluminium it is 3 and silicon it is 4. So this is the chart which is given on page number 54. Now based on this chart I can ask you valency for any element in the exam. You will not be provided with the atomic number also. So your duty is you should know the atomic numbers at least up till the first 14 elements which are given in your textbook, and from the atomic number you have to find out the valency. Now there is one more concept in valency, variable valency. What happens under different conditions? The atoms of some of the elements, they not only take up a particular number of electrons but they give up or take up different number of electrons, and in such cases what happens? These elements exhibit more than one valency, and this property of the elements of exhibiting more than one valency is called as variable valency. Variations. Valency is varying, it is not stable as it is for other elements. So this property of the elements is called variable valency. Now there are certain elements who show variable valency. We will see which are they. One is copper, one is mercury, one is iron having symbols Cu, Hg. Hg is derived from the Latin name hydrargyrum. Iron derived from ferrum, so Fe. For copper valency is 1 and 2 forming iron Cu plus and Cu2 plus, Q plus and cupric. For mercury also valency is 1 and 2, Hg plus and Hg2 plus, mercury. And for iron exhibits two valencies, that is 2 and 3, Fe2 plus and Fe3 plus, ferrous and ferric. So these are the different elements which exhibit more than one valency and they show variable valency. Next is what are radicals. Compounds with ionic bonds have two constituents, that is cation and anion. Yesterday also you have seen in the formation of sodium chloride. One is the cation, one is the anion. They take part independently in the chemical reaction. You have seen in yesterday's example how sodium as a cation and chlorine as an anion, they take part in the chemical reaction independently and hence they are called as radicals. Our last topic for the chapter is to find a chemical formula of any compound. N number of examples we have studied. All the textual examples I have covered. One more example just for your practice. To find the chemical formula of any compound, the name will be provided to you. Step number 1 is to write the symbols of the radicals. So here it is sodium and sulfate. So Na and SO4. Write the valency below the respective radical. Sodium you know 1, sulfate it is 2. Cross multiply as shown by the arrows the number of radicals. So Na multiply by 2, Na2, SO4 multiply by 1, SO4 1. So the chemical formula of sodium sulfate is Na2SO4. So based on this you can find out the chemical formula of any compound provided you know their symbols and the valencies of each of them very thoroughly. So here our revision for chapter number 3, chapter number 4 which were there for your first online assessment is over. Now we start with the revision for chapter number 2 which we have completed in the second online assessment. So we will revise chapter number 2 and remaining 2 chapters are already covered recently and all the topics are known to you. Everything was covered. So for our science section A, this is the last chapter of revision, work and energy. The very first definition which comes into play here is work. Work is said to be done when a force applied on an object causes displacement of the object. Here we had taken so many examples in which case work is done, which case work is not done. So what can be the formula for work? Force applied causing a displacement. So work is equal to force into displacement. Now the 3 types of works we have seen with the help of examples: positive work, negative work and zero work. When you can say that the work is positive? If I had told you, for example, a car, its wheels are stuck up in the mud. You push the car and the car has started moving. So the force applied by you and the movement, the displacement of the car are in the same direction. That is theta is equal to 0 degree. Then you can say the work done by the applied force is positive. See, you have applied the force to that car and the car has also started moving in the same direction. It is not moving back towards you. You are pushing the car and the car has also started to move in the same direction. Then the work done by the applied force is positive. Exactly opposite, when the force and the displacement are in the opposite directions, theta is equal to 180 degree. Work done by the force is negative. And third case, when the applied force does not cause any displacement, a heavy stone is lying on the ground floor, you are trying to push it very hard with the help of your hands, with the help of your legs, but little bit also there is no displacement, no movement seen in that stone, then I can say that the force and the displacement are perpendicular to each other and the work done by the applied force is 0. No work is done by you even though you are applying your entire force, muscular force of your body, but there is no displacement caused in the stone. The applied force does not cause any movement, then we can say that the work done by the force is 0. So these are the 3 types of work. Positive work, that is when the force and displacement are in the same direction. Negative work, when the force and displacement are in the opposite directions, and zero work when the applied force does not cause any displacement, then the work done by the force is zero. Next, we are going to move towards the second topic of the chapter. The name of the chapter is work and energy. We begin with energy. All of you know what is energy. Unless and until your energy level is high, you lack the capacity to perform any work. So how you can define energy scientifically? Energy is the capacity of any object, capacity of any body to perform the work. Now, as I have told you, for energy to be utilized, work has to be done. So, as the units of work are joule and erg, similar are the units for energy. So, SI unit of work is joule. So, SI unit of energy is also joule. And CGS unit of energy is, work is erg, and similar is the unit for energy. So, in short, what you can say, work and energy are interrelated with each other, hence they are having the same units. The two types of mechanical energies which we are going to study in details in this chapter are kinetic energy and potential energy. These are the two forms of mechanical energy. You know that energy exists in various forms in nature around you, in the form of mechanical energy, solar energy, heat energy, light, sound energy, electromagnetic, chemical energy, nuclear energy. So, n number of energies are there. So, in details we are going to study the two forms of mechanical energy, that is kinetic and potential energy. So, let's begin with kinetic energy. Kinetic energy, I had told you that the energy which an object has, the energy which any object possesses because of its movement. The energy which an object has because of its motion, because of its movement is called kinetic energy. And we had seen so many examples. For example, I had told you during a cricket match, a fast bowler, he bowls a ball and the stumps are hit, the stumps fall off, the batsman is declared out. So a fast cricket ball strikes the stumps. Now this energy is gained by the ball because of the movement of the bowler. Or you can, when you play carom, the striker hits a coin. So because of the movement, the energy is possessed by the object, that is kinetic energy. So you can say that the energy which an object has because of its motion is called its kinetic energy. Now let us see how the formula for kinetic energy is derived. For derivation of kinetic energy, you have to consider a stationary object of mass m which moves because of an applied force. Suppose you take an example of striker. You are hitting the coin. So that coin which was stationary has moved because of the applied force. So here you consider any stationary object of mass m which moves because of an applied force. Let u be its initial velocity. Now the object initially is at rest. It is stationary. So u will be equal to 0. Let the applied force be moving because of the applied force. So let the applied force be capital F. Now this applied force, it generates an acceleration in the object, and acceleration is denoted by small a, and after a certain time t, the speed, the velocity of the object becomes equal to v. So initially the velocity was 0, which after movement and after a particular time t becomes equal to v. The displacement, the movement during this time is s. So the work done on an object can be shown as W is equal to force into displacement, that is F multiplied by S. Now according to Newton's second law of motion, in the first chapter we have seen all the three laws of motion and you know the force equation. So according to the Newton's second law of motion, F is equal to m into A. S is equal to ut plus half at square. Now, from where we have derived this S is equal to ut plus half at square, we have seen the equations of motion. So take that equation, s is equal to ut plus half at square. Now you all know that u is equal to 0. So u multiply by t, 0 multiply by any number comes out to 0. So s is equal to 0 plus half at square. So it is nothing but s is equal to half at square. Now substitute this in the previous equation. W is equal to F into S. So in place of F you will write MA, and in place of S you are going to write half at square. So our equation becomes MA multiplied by half at square. Take half over here, half multiply by M. Now you can see A is also A into A. So A square, T is also square. So put AT inside the bracket and AT square. Now by using Newton's first equation of motion, that is V is equal to U plus AT. U is equal to 0. So what is V? V is nothing but AT. So in place of AT you can put V. So what you will get? Half M. AT means in place of AT you are putting V. So V square. Now the kinetic energy which is gained by an object is nothing but the amount of work done on the object. You are applying the force. So the work done is nothing but kinetic energy. So kinetic energy is nothing but work. So in place of work you can write kinetic energy is equal to half mv square. So this is the derivation for kinetic energy of any moving object, and this formula can be used to solve the numerical examples which are based on moving objects. At the same time, this entire expression should also be learnt by you thoroughly, because it can be asked as a 5 marks brief question. So let us see the next form of mechanical energy, that is potential energy. Now, the first energy, kinetic energy, is the energy possessed by an object because of motion. So, the energy stored in any object because of its specific state or position is called its potential energy. Because of the position, because of the state, because of the configuration of the object, the energy which is stored in the body, the possessed in the body, that is known as potential energy. A good example is compressed spring, or we have taken the example water which is stored in a dam. Due to the height of the dam, the energy which is possessed by the water is potential energy. So the energy which is stored in an object because of its position, state or configuration is known as potential energy. So let us see the derivation expression for potential energy. Here you consider any object having mass m to a height h above the earth's surface. A force equal to mass into acceleration, that is m into g, has to be used against the direction of gravitational force. When you are raising something to a height, you are acting against the earth's gravitational force. The amount of work done can be calculated as, apply the formula for work. Work is equal to force multiplied by displacement. In place of force, you can write a force equal to mg. So mg, and displacement is nothing but height. So h. So W is equal to mgh. Now, the amount of potential energy stored in the object because of its displacement is equal to mgh. So work is nothing but equal to potential energy, and hence the formula for potential energy is m multiplied by g multiplied by h. That is mass of the object multiplied by acceleration due to gravity multiplied by height to which the object is raised. Next is law of conservation of energy. Here we have taken so many examples seeing the transformation of energy. How energy can be transformed, how energy can be converted from one form to the other form. We have seen how in the electrical energy is converted into mechanical energy by an engine, fan. Generator again converts that mechanical energy into electrical energy. So what does this law state? Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. You cannot go to the lab and create or produce energy. It can be converted from one form into the another. See, energy can neither be created nor energy can be destroyed. It can be converted from one form into another. Thus, the total amount of energy in the universe always remains constant. Energy, the total amount of energy which is existing in the universe, that will remain constant. It will not get declined, neither it will rise. It can only be converted from one form to the other form. After that, we had seen about the free fall. So for free fall, you had taken different positions of the object when the object is stationary or when the object is reaching a certain point, and then we had derived how the total energy remains constant. And towards the end, we had a very, very important concept, that is power. What is meant by power? For that, we had taken up an example. Rajashri, Yash and Ranjit have to reach to the top of a small hill. A small hill is there. All the three have to reach to the top of the hill. Rajashri went by car. Yash went on the bicycle, that is cycling, while Ranjit went walking. If all of them choose the same path, the path is same, the top of the hill is same, but the modes required to reach there are different. One is going there by car, other one is going by cycling, and the third one is going walking. Who will reach first and who will reach last? You know, in this case, Rajashri will reach first because she has made use of car, whereas second person to reach is the one who is cycling, and Ranjit will be the one to reach last. So depending on this example, you can define power. Power is the rate at which work is done. See, the amount of work was same, that is reaching the top of the hill. The path followed was also same, but the time taken by each one of them was different. So what you can say, power of Rajashri is more. Whatever mode of transport she has used, power of Rajashri is more. So power is the rate at which work is done. So if W amount of work is done in time t, then the formula for power will be work upon time. It is inversely proportional to time. If you complete an allotted amount of work in less time, then I can say that the power is greater. So P, power is denoted by capital P, is equal to capital W for work upon time, that is small t. Now, you know that work in SI system, its unit is joule. So, the unit of power will be joules per second. You all know time is always denoted in seconds. So, SI system, the unit of work is joule. So, in SI system, the unit of power will be joule per second, and this joule per second is called as watt, in honor of the scientist James Watt. So, what you can say about 1 watt? 1 watt is 1 joule of work done in 1 second. In the industrial sector, the unit which is used to measure the power is called as horsepower. Remember all these units formula very thoroughly. Under objectives it can be asked in the exam. 1 horsepower is equal to 746 watt. This conversion also should be remembered by you. The unit of energy for commercial use, that is in the factories or industries, the power, the energy which is used, the unit used for that is kilowatt hour. 1000 joule work performed in 1 second is 1 kilowatt power. So 1 kilowatt hour is equal to 1 kilowatt multiplied by 1 hour. 1 kilowatt is equal to 1000 watt. 1 hour is equal to 3600 seconds. If you multiply both, you will get this many joules, that is 36 lakhs joule. So 1 kilowatt hour is equal to 3.6 multiplied by 10 raised to 6 joules. Electricity which is used for domestic purposes, that is when you get the light bill of your house, the amount of energy or the amount of electricity measured in units of kilowatt hour, and 1 kilowatt hour is equal to 1 unit. I had told you, when you get the electricity bill in your hand, in the center of the electricity bill, you have the number of units consumed every month. Month of January, how many units are consumed. Month of February, how many units are consumed. And then the charge is declared by the electricity department as to what is the cost of 1 unit. and then according to your units which are consumed, that much is multiplied by the cost of 1 unit, and then your electricity bill is prepared. So once again, within 2 minutes we will see the units for power. The SI unit of power is watt. 1 watt is equal to 1 joule per 1 second. Industrial sector, the unit used to measure the power is horsepower. 1 horsepower is equal to 746 watt. For commercial use, the unit of energy is kilowatt hour. 1000 joule work performed in 1 second is 1 kilowatt per, and 1 kilowatt hour is nothing but 3.6 into 10 raised to 6 joules. Electricity which is used for domestic purposes is measured in units of kilowatt hour, and 1 kilowatt hour is equal to 1 unit. So a homework for you is, all of you are going to refer your this month's electricity bill. Check in the center of your bill whether the power consumed in units for at least 6 to 7 months, whether they are printed or no. So here we complete with the revision of chapters which were completed under our first and second online assessment, and our revision for section A is over. So in our tomorrow's section, we are going to revise chapter number 8, that is useful and harmful microbes. The video which we have seen and for that chapter when it was explained, same video I will be taking up as revision. So I expect all of you to go through the chapter before sitting for our next video. Thank you.